Alrighty, so for today, you were supposed to have read the rules and overview, the rules of procedure, right? So those are the parliamentary rules. They are important because knowing how to use the rules is good and it's important for your performance at the conference. Right, so the dais are going to notice, your other delegates are going to notice, and it makes a difference. So we're going to slow but steady since my brain is in overdrive and I can barely speak English. We will slow but steady overview the rules of procedure. So when you get to the moon and when the conference starts, the conference starts on Sunday evening. The first thing that we have is the opening ceremony, right? All of us, we go together to the salon where we're having the open ceremony. We will sit together and they're going to introduce the secretariat. They're going to probably have a speaker that's going to talk about the importance of Module N, blah, 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 blah. That's supposed to last for about an hour. And after that, we'll have our first session, right? Our first session is the session where we set the agenda, is the session of the setting of the agenda. When we get to that first session, the dais will make a very, very quick introduction. And Amy has been there before. It's very short, isn't it? So it's not like long-term explaining, blah, 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 like there's nothing like that. There is an optional review of the procedure early on Sunday for people who are interested. People who have gone to that before from Lee, don't really think it's necessary because if you review this now and if you know what this is about, you gain a couple of hours in the Sunday afternoon where we can go do fun things. Another reason why we should learn this now. If you happen not to learn this now, you can go to the optional review of the rules, but from experience that I've had from our students, like they're like, oh, I already knew all of that. That was really a loss of time. Wait a minute. Yes, so the dais consists of, just so you know, the director, the assistant director, the chair, I think I spelled it right, and the rapporteur. Yes, oh, great speller. And the rapporteur. So you're going to have those four figures sitting at the front of the room, right? And they are what you refer to the dais. So they are going to do, usually the chair will do a brief introduction. And soon enough, you're going to start to set the agenda. The first thing that, Amy, correct me if that's incorrect, that is going to happen is that we are going to, the chair is going to open the speakers list. And what you're going to do is that every one of you will have a placard. So you're going to have a placard with the name of your country. And as you raise up your placard, you are indicating that you want to be added to the speakers list, right? So as countries, as delegates raise up the placard with their country's name, then they are added to the speakers list. So we're going to have USA, Brazil, China, India, Colombia, Sri Lanka, St. Kitts and Nevis, and so on, right? And the speakers list, when you're operating in the context of the speakers list, that's what we call a formal debate, right? So each delegate from each country will come up front in the order in which they are in the speakers list. So chances are, usually, there is a big screen in the room. So let's say if the dais is here, Then you have, let's say, a big screen over here and someone typing in the speakers list. Rarely it's not a screen, it's something else, but it's usually a screen. And so someone from the dais is typing in the countries and they're adding them to the speakers list. And then countries will talk in the order in which they appear in the speakers list. And usually the dais will already have set up a timing, let's say 45 seconds or 60 seconds, right? So what that means is that when they call São Tomé and Príncipe, then one of you, will come up front, get the mic, and say your speech. The speakers list, like you're going to have lots of countries and you're going to have that very long speakers list, and you might or might not be like up front in the beginning. So one of the advantages is this gives you time to prep your little speech, right? So it's not that when you're operating in terms of speakers list, it's not that you need to get there up front and just like think, out of your feet, like, oh my gosh, what I'm gonna say now, what am I, it's not that, right? So it's supposed to be thought of. And usually, if you're talking about in terms of the speakers list, you have your little speech about, if it is in the context of setting of the agenda, why do you prefer topic 1 to be the first topic discussed, and then topic 2, and then topic 3, or whatever topic you were the best prepared to, right? So the goal of the setting of the agenda is that the committee as a whole will vote on which topics they will discuss first, second, and third, right? So let's say you can propose that topic 1 be discussed first, and then topic 2 be discussed second, and then topic 1 be discussed third, or whatever order you are. That's what setting the agenda means. Like, what's the order in which the topics will be discussed? For us, and for the conference, what really, really matters is only the order of the first topic. It's only which topic goes first. Because in the conference, you will only discuss one topic, right? So for us, so let's say that our favorite order would be 1, 2, 3. Right? But let's say that there is another group out there that would propose 1, 3, 1. We don't care. Like, as long as one goes first, we don't care. So we can vote with these people, right? So if we don't have a majority here, we can vote here. So the content of the speeches in this first moment usually would be something reflecting of the delegation of São Tomé and Príncipe's delighted to be here to discuss such important matters. Would like to point out that the topic that is the most urgent among all those topics is topic 1, which is blah, 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 for whatever reasons. Because these million people are being affected worldwide by drastic climate change, whatever you have in your first paragraph in terms of stats. Right? So your goal is to, when you're speaking in terms of the speakers list, is to argue to the committee the importance of discussing that topic first, right? Then you have time to prepare for that because you're going to have lots of other countries ahead of you probably. Chances are you're not going to be the first one in the list, right? So just prepare your 45 seconds to 60 seconds. I don't know, the dais sets the time, the speaking time. There are a motion that can be moved to change it later on, but you usually don't do it up front, right? So just go with it. But you can do your little speech here. So we're going to have country after country after country. And later on, if you just, like, as soon as you were done speaking, what you really want to do is to look at the dais and raise your placard again so that your name, the name of our country, is added back again to the end of the speakers list. All right? You want to make sure that we always have the name of our country in the speakers list. William?
Will we know what the order of the speakers list, or at least our order on the speakers list, is beforehand?
So there's going to be a screen, and in that screen is going to be a list of countries, right? And U.S., Argentina, Brazil, St. Kitts and Nevis, São Tomé and Príncipe. Like, you're going to be able to see that. Okay. So that's how you know the order.
So it's not going to be like alphabetized or in terms of GDP or anything like that?
No. The speakers list is whoever raised their placards first. Right? So what is the order in which countries speak at the UN? Well, it's whoever wants to speak first. Right? So that's why I'm saying when you get there, as soon as the dais say that we're opening up the speakers list, you got to get your placard and you literally raise it up, indicating that you want it to be added. And as soon as you were done talking, you want to look at the dais, and raise it up again. Right? Remember, it's not like 10 countries or 15. We're going to have like 190 something countries, so the speakers list is going to be long. Right? And again, the order is not alphabetical. The order is whoever raises their placard first. All right?
Why do we want to be added again if we already spoke on that?
Because the debate will continue, right? So as countries already spoke, they're crossed off of the speakers list. So it will kind of like rotate, but not like in the first order in which it was. It's like whoever then wants to continue to speak continues to speak. Part of your goal is that you want the dais to know who you are. You want the dais to know they were participating, that you were prepared, right? So you want to come out as a delegate that's prepared and know what they're doing, that's involved, that's interested. So number one, being in the speakers list, send that signal to the dais. Being in the speakers list also sends a signal to the other delegates. Of course, I mean, delegates that are going to be as prepared as you are probably doing the exact same thing as you did. See, notice what I said, did and or are going to do before we go, which is to read the position papers. To read the position papers of other delegations. But it will also send a signal that not only you wrote a position paper well, you were prepared to address the committee publicly and talk about what you wrote in terms of this is our policy, or that's why we prefer this topic, or whatever is the content of your speech, right? So it also sends a signal. And sending that signal is important because remember, we have a goal. Our goal is to make sure that the policy prescriptions in our third paragraph are part of the final draft resolution. We have a means to achieve our goal. The means to achieve our goal is to make sure that we're involved, directly involved in the process of writing the draft resolution. Being directly involved in the process of writing the draft resolution is partly a function of attracting good delegates to work with you and instilling confidence in those other delegates so that you know what you're doing. You instill confidence by, number one, having an awesome position paper, which you guys have. Like it indicates as a signal that you've done your work, it's an evidence that you've done your work. By knowing the rules of procedure and by just displaying a behavior or having a behavior that shows that you know what you're doing. That's one of those, right? Does that make sense? So add your names to the speakers list. And then you can read, like you don't need to like speak out of, you don't need to memorize your speech. You can literally like write it down while you're waiting for you to come on the speakers list. One of you can be writing it down and then you can be double checking. And when you get up front, like you can have your piece of paper with you and read out of your paper, right? The content matters more than just getting there and being funny but saying something that's not relevant. Right? So the point is to be relevant. It's to show that you know what you're talking about. And while perhaps you're writing your thing, the other one of you, because you're going in pairs, is paying attention on what other countries in the speakers list are saying. And you're considering, like, do I want to make an alliance with this country? Do I not want to make an alliance with this country? Why are they saying what they're saying? Right? So it's also a way for you to assess, for you to obtain information of who they are and what they want. All right?
Do you address the dais or do you address the people like delegates?
Address anyone, we don't have, we can say
like
most honorable dais
and
fellow delegates. That's a typical.
Yeah, or you can just start your speech.
You can, yes, it doesn't matter. Yeah, some people say something like honorable. For me, I'll get in trouble. Honorable. There's one time I said, and I meant to say honorable, and I think I sounded like dishonorable, which was very bad. Don't do that, people. Most honorable chair and dais, fellow delegates, but you don't have to. You can just go and say, the delegation of Santa Maria proposes that, blah, 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 right?
Can we have a pre-written speech beforehand?
Yeah, that's exactly what I just said.
So you're just saying that we could submit?
Not now. You're not bringing one with you, but you can write it while you were there.
Like we can't bring a speech with
No,
us.
you cannot bring anything that's pre-written except for your position paper, which has already been published. So no pre-written resolutions. And like, I will punish you severely, or so God help me, if you cheat. right? By severely, I mean you might fail.
And there's really no way you can
yeah.
rewrite something or
Yeah.
like for the speakers list because you don't know what other people are gonna say.
Yeah.
You don't know who you want to work with and stuff.
You don't know what you're reacting to,
Yeah.
right? So, but no, you cannot pre-write anything. It's on the spot. And besides your position paper, so you can have your position paper with you. You should have the rules of procedure, especially the summarized version right here, so that you can, you know, have your cheat sheet. You should have the preambular clauses with you. You should have the operative clauses, just because why memorize all of that. So those documents you can have. You should have your UN charter. You should have the basic documents of your committee that you're utilizing, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, like things like that. Not only you can have, you should have, because you might need to check them up while you're doing work. But what you cannot have is a pre-written resolution, a pre-written speech, a pre-written, like, none of that. Even if the speeches doesn't really help. But believe me, because the speakers list is going to be so long, you're going to have time to sit there and write something quick, you know, to speak in like 45, 60 seconds.
In that speech, in the speakers list, do we say only our most favorite topic, or do we go through all three of the topics and say this is why we want this one, this is why we want this second, and this is why we want this third?
Remember, be strategic, right? So you're probably not going to have more than 60 seconds. We're not going to have time to make a lengthy speech, and they're going to cut you off.
Right, so
oh man, I forgot my little thing. So I have my little gavel. Yes, we're checking upstairs at some point and pick it up. But when you're usually, let's say, they're going to say when you're 10 seconds out, they are going to, and you know, and they're going to like, you're done, like you don't get to speak after. So be strategic. Like, what does that mean? Offering more evidence of why you think topic one matters most. And you can say in the end, you can just say, and then you don't have to. We believe topic one's better most, and we propose for that. Other delegates who also agree with that, please come talk to us during informal session.
Yeah, we will be
there
in
we
the
go.
left corner. Like, you can even tell them where you're going to be.
Yes.
And then they'll know.
We're going to be in the left corner, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Come talk to us, right? You want to be strategic in your use of time, right? So this is how it all starts. Now, if you get your little ENMON rules of procedure short form, and we're going to follow this for now, follow the order, we know that a formal debate is not the only time or the only form in which diplomacy is going to happen. Right, so most of the time, in fact, we're going to be moving to what it's called informal debate or informal session. Different people call it differently. And when we move from formal to informal, an informal debate or an informal session means that we freeze, we pause the speaker's list, right? So it's going to pick up where it left. And you're going to have an allotted time for where you can literally get out of your chairs, move to whatever corner we're moving, and go talk to people, look to people, and say, hey, I'm the delegate of Santo Domingo Príncipe. I've heard what you said in your speech, and I'd like to know whether you would also like to have topic one as going first. And do you know other countries that are also interested in that? Can we get your vote? Do we have this? Is that an agreement? Right? So that's when you're literally getting out of your seat, moving, talking to people. Right? So, but in order to transition from the speakers list, from the formal debate to the informal debate, a motion has to be done. So before we get on that specific motion, we're going to go follow this in this order just because it's easier, and so that you know all the motions that are out there, right? So the first motion is what we call a point of order, right? And usually either in between countries talking in the speakers list, like if you raise your hand or if you submit like a written piece of paper to the dais, like I have a motion of a point of order. This is not something that you want to be doing, by the way, because a point of order, the purpose is to correct an error in procedure, right? So if someone from the dais, if the chair or someone from the dais does a procedure that is incorrect, a point of order is meant to correct that. Chances are they're not going to be making that many mistakes, right? So unless you were really sure that they really messed up a procedure, you don't want to do that. And also you don't want to come off as being obnoxious. So if you do it, like make sure that you were sure that they really messed up a procedure and that you present it in a nice, helpful way. There is no debate, right? So when someone moves a motion, moves a point of order, introduces a point of order, there is no debate, there is no vote. You just explain to the dais why you think that procedure was incorrect. This should not happen, and I really don't see you guys utilizing it unless like you've been there 2,000 times, not really, but like Amy, and you really know the rules, probably are, you're not that confident yet, but just so you know when it happens, a point of order corrects a error in procedure. Another motion that you were not going to do, chances are, like 99.9%, is an appeal to the chair. Right, so an appeal to the chair challenges a decision of the chair, right? So it's questioning the chair's ruling, right? So kind of chances are they're not going to be making that many mistakes. Chances are we're not going to need this. But an appeal to the chair doesn't need debate, and it requires a majority of the committee to agree with you for to revert to the decision of the chair. Chances are this is not really going to happen. Right, so point of order, appeal to the chair. This now is what starts to matter for us. Right, so highlight that one or mark it down. Make sure they remember that. It's a motion to suspend the meeting. This is the motion that you use when you want to transition from the speakers list to informal debate. Right, so the speakers list is going to go for a while, let's say half an hour or so. And after that point, you've heard enough delegates. There is kind of enough of an idea of where most countries or some countries are in the spectrum of which topics they prefer and why. And someone, including you, may, by the way, the chair is going to ask, at this point, are there any points or motions on the floor? Right? Are there any points or motions on the floor? That's the point when you raise up your placard and you say that São Tomé and Príncipe motions for a suspension of the meeting for, let's say, 30 minutes or 20 minutes. You have to specify how long you want the suspension of the meeting to be. That means that the speakers list is going to be suspended. It's going to be frozen. You're going to pick it up where you left later. But for the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes or however that motion you motion for, you're going to be transitioning to informal debate. Does that make sense? Be aware that because we have lots of delegates and some of them are obnoxious, some of the obnoxious delegates, let's say you just motioned for a suspension of the meeting for 30 minutes. Someone who is obnoxious would move a second because the chair is going to ask, are there any other points or motions on the floor? An obnoxious delegate would motion for 35 minutes. Like, who cares? What's the difference between 30 and 35? Like, this is someone who is showing off in a non-good way. So don't be obnoxious. But if you have like a significant, if you say like for 45, like 30 to 45 matters, right? So 30 to 35, not as much, right? So this is what I'm saying. We're going to have other delegates proposing either less time or more time. The motions are going to be voted in the order they were introduced, right? And this specific motion requires a majority, right? So we're going to say São Tomé and Príncipe motions for a suspension of the debate for 30 minutes. And then the chair is going to ask, are there any other motions on the floor? Other delegates are going to motion. And then you're going to vote yours first because you're the first one that motioned. And then if you get a majority of votes, it passes. And then you're automatically transition from the speakers list to the informal debate, right? So when the chair, we are now in informal debate, delegates come back in 30 minutes. And at that point, you get up and you go do your business, right? Questions?
So let's say that there are obnoxious countries, like we say we motion for 30 minutes, and one country comes with us, we vote for 35, another country we vote for 25. and it goes to votes, could a country vote for multiple one of those, or would they have to choose? I'm only going to vote for one.
If there are multiple motions on the floor, the motions are going to be voted in the order that they were introduced.
Okay.
Right? So let's say you introduced 30 first, and then it doesn't pass. Right? This motion doesn't pass. Now we're going to vote for the motion from blah, blah, blah country that asks for 25 minutes. As soon as it passes, then all the other motions fail, right?
Okay.
This one passed.
Okay.
All right? And now you're in informal debate. So the two of you get up, you start to meet people, greet people, ask them what they think, start to form your alliance, and would you like, hey, if you get this approved, would you like to be in a working group, right? If you think they're a good delegate and so on. So that's the moment where you start to make those connections. At the end of the informal debate, we'll return back to your seat, and you will continue with the speakers list, and so on.
But this has to happen first in order to go into informal debate.
Yes, we'll always start like this. We will always start with the speakers list. It never starts an informal debate. You only have informal debate when someone moves for suspension. Suspension. Of the meeting. No. Yes. There we go. Right? So it only moves after someone moves a motion to suspend the meeting. When the time's up, you come back to your seats. Now, let's continue to review the motions. The next one is a adjournment of the meeting. You or whoever will only use this motion in the very final day. This ends the meeting. It means you're not meeting anymore. Committee work is done. Right? So this is the very, very last motion ever to be proposed. It requires a majority, used only on final day, ends the committee for the year. So after all is said and done, you voted, you passed your draft resolutions. You're going to be, most of you, probably in the rear UN, in the General Assembly meeting, when after you pass what you have to pass, the chair who is presiding will ask, does anyone have a motion to end the meeting, or does anyone have any motions? And that's when someone proposes a motion to adjourn the meeting, right? So, likelihood that you're going to use this motion, very low, since you're going to have lots of people and lots of people raising their placards. You can give it a shot if you so desire, raise it up at the very end, and maybe you'll be chosen. Someone will propose it. That means we're done, the conference is over, right? In the real UN, it would mean that committee no longer meets until next year, or the next time we're supposed to meet. The next motion that you will not make, I repeat, you will not make, is the motion for adjournment of the debate. Right? You also need to know what these motions are, because if an obnoxious delegate moves them, you know how to vote against. Okay? You vote against. The next motion is a motion for adjournment of the debate that ends the debate without a substantive vote, and it tables the topic. So that's what we call tabling the topic, which means you're not talking about this topic anymore, you're moving on to the next topic, you're not voting on this. So usually you don't want that, right? So you already fought really hard to set the agenda, right? And let's say when you decided you are working on a topic, especially if it is a topic you want, why do you want to adjourn the debate? You want to continue to debate the topic, that you chose from. So this is really someone who's really obnoxious would propose that. This type of motion would require 2 people speaking against and 2 people speaking in favor, right? Usually would be, we don't think that there is enough consensus in the room to find a good resolution in this topic. It's pointless to continue to discuss this now. This would be the type of speech in favor of this motion. And in that case, not only you would vote against, probably, but you could also go up front and say things against it. Oh, that's not true. We have a good number of working groups, and we have good solutions that just need more debate, and so on and so on. right? So this will require a roll call. A roll call, whenever a roll call happens, it means that the dyer is going to call country by country, and as they call your country, you're going to vote yes or no. That's also awful because a roll call takes forever. Imagine you're in a committee where you have 190 something countries, and you're calling them one by one, and some countries have very long names. It takes like forever. We're going to talk more about roll call in a bit, but just so you know. So another thing you are not doing is adjourning the meeting. Or adjourning the debate, not adjourning the meeting, adjourning the debate, right? So adjourning the meeting, end of the conference, adjourning debate, you table the topic. You don't want to adjourn the debate. All right, so consider a scenario where that was the first day, you start to set the agenda, you start a formal debate, you move to informal debate, that ended, you move back to formal debate, I'm going to talk about that soon, you voted on your topic, right? Let me see if that's correct. Okay, you're already discussing your topic and you are ready to vote the resolutions. You think that there has been enough work, or usually the dais think that there's been enough work on the floor, the committee got enough draft resolutions, you're ready to go to a vote. The motion for that is the motion for closure of the debate. Right? If the debate is closed, you're going to vote on all draft resolutions or report segments, and you're going to move to an immediate vote. It requires 2 people speaking against it, and it requires a 2/3 majority. If that's the case, it ends all discussion on the current topic. Right? So really, like, a motion to close the debate only happens when, and I think like the dais will only entertain it if the dais think there's enough draft reports or draft resolutions on the floor that you have, like, the committee has done enough work, right? So this is not something that happens like early on. It's something that will happen like later on before voting procedures. And then as you close the debate, you move immediately into voting procedure, all right? All right, another important motion. Lots of people think this is really difficult. It's not, right? This is not a difficult motion. It's the motion for the division of the question. A motion for the division of the question will only happen when you are in the process of voting. What does that mean? Consider that you have a draft report or a draft resolution, right? So you're going to have your preambular clauses. Right? Blah, 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 blah. You have all the preambular clauses. That's your second paragraphs and other people's second paragraphs. And then you have your operative clauses. Right, so this is a draft resolution or draft report. Clause 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, so a motion to divide the question is a motion to break this draft report or draft resolution. And by the way, if this is a draft report, then this is introduction, right? And this is conclusions and recommendations. It's the same thing.
But we won't do mandate because they give us that.
No, yes, mandate's right here. You don't do it, right? So introduction plus mandate, if you so desire. And this is operative clauses or conclusion and recommendations. A motion to divide the question only applies to operative clauses or to conclusions and recommendations if you're doing a report, right? You cannot ask to divide a preambular clause or an introduction or a mandate. That's the first thing you want to know about that. Number 2, what does it mean to divide the question? To divide the question means that if you move for that, you're going to send your little note to the dais saying that you want to divide the question, that you're moving a motion, so you're not going to raise your placard, you're going to write down your little note to the dais, and let's say you want to divide the question and divide clause 3 or recommendation 3 out of the resolution or the report. That's what you're doing. You're dividing out of. In practice, that means that you're asking for this specific clause to be voted separately from the rest of the resolution or the report. Does that make sense? So usually resolutions or reports, they're not voted clause by clause, right? So you have a resolution or you have a report. The dais is going to provide copies for everyone, and you're going to read the whole thing. And if you agree with most of what's in there, chances are you're voting yes, right? If you think that the majority of the content of the resolution or the report's outrageous and against your foreign policy, you're going to vote no, but you vote on an entire resolution and you vote on an entire report, right? Normally. When you divide the question, you are asking to vote on one clause or on a group of clauses. It could be clauses 2 and 3 as well, right? It could be one clause or a group of clauses. You need to specify which ones to vote those separately from the rest of the resolution. Does that make sense? So that's what this motion does. Now, this motion has two parts, right? It has a procedural part and it has a substantive part. That only sounds sophisticated. It really is not. So you're going to have two votes if you move this motion. The first vote is to ask the committee. So let's say you propose that you vote clauses 2 and 3 separately, right? The first thing the committee needs to do is, okay, sure, do we want to do that or do we not want to do that? Does that make sense? Are we voting those separately, or this is just like, stop it? We're just voting everything together, right? So that's the procedural part, all right? So the first vote is a procedural vote. And in that specific vote, on the procedural vote, of course, we're going to have 2 delegates speaking in favor, 2 delegates speaking against. It requires a majority for that vote to pass. So, and the question is, do you want to separate these clauses, yes or no? Right? So if the majority of the committee votes no, they are not being separated, they're not being divided out, they're being voted together with the rest of the resolution. You continue with life, all right? Now, if the committee vote yes, let's say, sure, let's vote those 2 clauses separately, right? So if the outcome of the procedural vote is yes, then you have another vote, right? Which is, now you are voting those 2 clauses separately from the rest of the resolution. So the committee is going to be voting on whether they want these 2 clauses to become part of an annex of the resolution, or if they want those 2 clauses to be completely stricken out of the resolution. Right? So this is what it does. So if you move a motion to divide the question and the committee agrees procedurally to entertain that motion and to vote whether you want to divide the question yes or no, right? So you say you're not dividing the question, you're voting on the whole thing as a whole, you move on. If you are dividing the question, then that means you were voting those 2 clauses separately, right? And that's the next thing that happens. That's why it's the substantive part. You're voting on the substance of those clauses. Do you agree with their content? Yes or no, right? And if you agree with their content, if you vote yes to those 2 clauses that you voted separately, they become an annex at the end of the resolution. If you vote no, they are stricken out. Normally, countries vote yes. Oh, look at that, 50 cents. Countries vote yes on issue to divide the question in the real UN when they want to highlight those clauses. When those clauses are so important that they want to make a statement, it becomes an annex. When you read a real-world resolution and it has annexes, the part that really means is the annexes. Like, that's the meat of it. So on the one hand, well-meaning delegates will move this motion to emphasize, to highlight those clauses, either if it's a report or if it's a resolution. bad delegates, I mean evil meaning delegates, could use this motion to strike out clauses that you think are fundamental to your resolution. And if they wanted to fail, they can move this motion, because if they get a no, this is no longer part of your resolution. But if this was the heart of your resolution just becomes weak. Does that make sense? Okay, no one is being evil delegate here. All right? Good people delegate. All right, so if you do that, it's to highlight, to emphasize, right? And if you do that, you kind of want to have a feeling from the committee that the majority of the committee will say yes, right? Because this is the heart of your resolution. This is the heart of your report. All right, so you don't want to just go and do it. You kind of want to feel that most people will agree with this. Okay? Does that make sense? See, it's not difficult at all. They say like, oh, it's so complicated. But no, it's not complicated. It's very simple. Do you want to separate those out, yes or no? If no, they don't no longer exist. Do you want to separate them out, yes or no? And we are voting separately or as a whole. And if you're voting separately, are they becoming an annex, or they are, you know, no longer existing, right? Questions on that?
What does it mean under the section debate when it says two pro/two con?
Every time you have that, there are certain motions that will require before the motion is voted, that two delegates will come up front and explain why they think that's an important motion. Two delegates will come up front and explain why they think this motion is not good. Like in this case, for example, if you're one of the sponsors, right, and you were proposing this motion, you would come up front to the mic and say, we're moving this motion because we think that those two clauses, they have the heart of the resolution. They exemplify, they're so important for whatever. They have been the result of such hard work from this committee, and this is so important for the international community. We need to emphasize that, right? And then the two people that were going to come and talk against it will give two speeches on the lines of, no, this is a waste of time. This resolution as a whole is important, let's not do it, right? So certain motions require that. So certain motions don't require debate, certain motions require debate. That's all it means before the motion goes to a vote. Questions? Moving on. Roll call vote. Roll call vote, which is utilized only in voting. You are not going to make this motion, people. Don't be obnoxious. I don't know anyone who ever enjoyed going through a roll call vote. It's the worst. You are like in the very end, and everyone wants to leave, and you are hungry. And I'm going to explain something else. That's very important. When we're in the process of voting for the resolutions or reports, when voting procedure begins, no one enters the room, no one leaves the room. If you're a delegate and you are out of the room when voting procedure begins, you cannot go in. I mean, a faculty can go in, a head delegate can go in, but that's it. You cannot. Likewise, if you are inside the room before voting procedure begins, you cannot leave the room until it's over, right? So you have to be in the room for the whole thing. This logistically, you want to be aware of a few things. If you know it's towards the end, of the conference, and you have enough resolutions, you're going to be going to voting, go to the bathroom before voting, get your snack before voting, don't drink lots of coffee before voting because you're going to want to use the restroom, and that's number one. Number two, if you're in voting procedure and an obnoxious candidate, that's what I'm saying, you're not going to do it because you are not obnoxious. If an obnoxious candidate moves for roll call voting doesn't have debate and it doesn't have a vote. Like it immediately moves to roll call voting. That's why it's so obnoxious. If someone says, I move to a motion for roll call voting, immediately we go into roll call. So we're going to have 198 different delegates voting yes or no, and it's going to take forever, and everyone's aggravated. I'm just saying. So no, don't do that, people. But just so we know what it is, and you don't even have an option. Hopefully there's not going to be any obnoxious people, but if there are and you were there and there was a roll call voting, oh, just sit there and yeah, wait. I mean, it's awful. It's really awful. Trust me, like at the end, you're tired. You kind of want to be done. And it's like, why? Like, why are we doing this? You person, you. You're going to see something after this, and it's not going to be diplomatic. Now, okay, don't do that. Something that you might do, because that's not obnoxious, is to move a motion to adopt a resolution or report by acclamation, right? Adopt a resolution or report by acclamation. So that means that you're adopting that as a consensus, a body as a consensus. So once you move this motion, there is no debate, there is no vote, right? So that's, again, another thing. The committee is not going to choose whether they're going to do that or not. So if someone moves by acclamation, it immediately goes to that. And the chair is going to ask if there are any dissensions, right? So is there anyone that disagrees with this resolution? And if there is, then it fails. So again, usually, so you move to adoption by acclamation when you are fairly certain that lots of the people in the committee, if there's like lots of consensus, if there is, if you were like, you know, the committee work well together, if there are like major rivalries and like bitter rivalries, I don't know, people hate your guts, like, no. But if, you know, you felt the committee was kind of like a flow and everyone kind of agreed and there was no major issue, and it's not like that you agree with 100% of the resolution of the report, but you agree enough with most of it, and there's like nothing there that fundamentally contradicts your foreign policy, right? So if there's something that fundamentally contradicts your foreign policy, you kind of want to have to dissent. But if not, then you can vote yes and a vote by acclamation. And you only want to move it, again, if you feel, you know, everyone is kumbaya in your committee, all peace and love, like everyone kind of agrees. They did things that are not necessarily contradict each other and so on. All right?
Does the chair ask for dissent if someone calls for a roll call vote?
No.
Or just automatically goes to it?
Yeah, a roll call vote is a vote that you call the names of the countries one by one in alphabetic order, and all the countries are going to vote yes or no. Right? It's a roll call. You're calling the names one by one. So whoever is saying no is dissenting, right? So that's what a roll call vote is. Each country is voting one at a time, yes or no, publicly. A normal vote, in a normal vote, when you move to a normal vote, the normal vote's the vote by placard. In a normal vote, when you're just moving to vote, let's say you close the debate and you're going to vote, right? As we talked about before, you're done, the resolutions are there, you're safe enough. Does anyone want to move a motion to close the debate? Raise up your placard. Our delegation moves a motion to close the debate, motions to close the debate, right? So, and then it's going to take a vote. The normal vote, the normal procedure is all delegates that are in favor of this resolution raise their placard, and then everyone in favor raise their placards, and then someone from the dais, they're going to count whoever raised their placards, and then they're going to ask again everyone who is against raise their placards, right? Depending on on the outcome. That's a normal vote. So a roll call vote is not a normal vote, and it's a vote that Andorra, Argentina, what's another country with A? They moved to B. Brazil, Bolivia, Belize, yes, Albania. Albania, Andorra, Argentina, I don't know, Angola. And then you're done with A's. Bolivia, Brazil, Belize, not in this order, in alphabetical order, by the way. Right, Bhutan, whatever, right? So it takes freaking forever because it says Andorra, and then the Andorran delegation votes yes. Angola. The delegates from Angola vote yes, honorable chair. Like, until you're done, like, I'm not even kidding, like, that's why it takes forever. They don't usually just say, like, yes or no. They're going to say, like, the delegation of St. Kitts and Nevis votes no. Like for real, people.
Can you get that after that?
Most people are obnoxious. Uh, so there you go. That enhance, it takes forever, you see. So a normal vote is a placard vote, right? A roll call vote is something that's usually not done. A vote by acclamation can be done. All right? Questions? All right, this next motion that you're also not going to need, because chances are it's not going to happen, but just so you know it exists, is a motion for reconsideration. A motion for reconsideration reopen debate on an issue that has been tabled. Like suppose someone, this would not ever happen at Modern UN, but suppose someone adjourned the debate, which means that it ended the debate and it tabled the topic. And then you're like, how did this happen? This is awful. How? Someone can move to reconsider, and you need to reconsider means let's not adjourn this debate. Let's go back to the debate. So what I'm saying is not going to happen, right? And you would need a 2/3 majority to untable the topic. But just so you know it exists, it's not going to happen. The next motion is the motion to set the speaker's time. Right? You're not going to do that in the first day, by the way. You can do it later if you so desire, but not in the first day. But if you think that the speaker's time is either too short or too long, you can, and it's rarely used, but you can ask the dais to set the speaker's time. Do you need to con and two in favor? Yeah, probably will happen at some point. Yeah, never permitted during the first committee session. But then you go. Okay, this is another important motion. So close the speakers list. Or to reopen the speakers list. You can have, it can go both ways. Right, so a motion to close the speakers list, if it is approved and it passed by majority, there's no debate, it passed by majority, it does not allow any other speakers to be added to the speakers list, right? So this is another way to go to end the debate and go into voting, right? Because once the speakers list is over, if there's no one else added, if everyone who was in the speakers list already spoke or done with debating, you immediately moves into voting, right? So in order to move to voting by the very end of the conference, you can either move to close the debate or move to close the speakers list. Doesn't really matter as much, but those are the two ways in which you move from the debate into voting. And the very final motion, is that the very, yes, that's the very final. The very final motion is the motion to adopt the agenda, which is the motion that you're going to do in the very first session, right? Remember, so set the agenda, open the speakers list, add your name to the speakers list. At some point, move for a suspension of the meeting, go into informal debate, debate with people, back to speakers list, probably back debating with people, back to speakers list. So you're going to be going back and forth on those. At some point in this very first day, this happens on Sunday evening, okay? In this very first day, when you think you got your consensus and your majority and you talked enough to people, you counted your votes, you whip the vote, you get a little list, you're confident, or whoever is confident first, move to adopt the agenda. And then you're going to have multiple motions here, right? So one of the candidates will say, the candidate of blah, 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 moves to adopt the agenda in the order, you have to say the order, in the order topic 1, topic 2, topic 3. Let's say that's not your thing, right? Are there any other motions on the floor? Yes. The delegation of Santa Maria Principe moves to adopt the agenda in the order 2, 3, 1. Let's say we want 2 first, right? You see? So, and because you didn't move first, you're really hoping that the first motion fails. Because when the first motion fails, if yours is the second, you're going to vote yours and you really hope it passes, right? But if the first motion passes, then you're done. Then we're in 1, 2, 3. All right, so when you have multiple motions, they're usually moved in that order. All right? In the order they are presented to the dais. So if you're very confident of your numbers, your support, you want to move first. If you were not, it's tricky because then if someone moves first, if they pass, you lose. So that's, oh?
With timing.
Which timing?
It's like you gotta find the right timing.
Sure. What I really mean is, it's very tricky, right? Because if you move the timing, like in the sense of, if you move to adopt the agenda, but you don't think you have your numbers, you might lose, and then you lose. Unless you move, let's say if you moved like 2, 3, 1, I suppose you can move later 2, 1, 3. It's a different motion. But that first time around you lost. And then you're lost. If you don't think you have enough numbers and someone goes ahead of you and they say 1, 2, 3, and they might win, right? And then in which case you lose. So there is a wisdom there. So you don't want to go too early if you don't have enough support, but you don't want to go too late. So that's the timing. Yes. Yes. Questions?
Why does the order really matter for that one exactly?
Well, because we have 3 topics,
Right.
right? When you move to adopt the agenda, the way the motion works is that you have to tell the committee that you're moving topic 1 first, and then topic 2, and then topic 3. It could be topic 1, topic 3, and topic 2. For you, it doesn't matter as long as topic 1 is first, or whatever topic.
About which one is first.
You only care about which one is first. But when you're removing the motion, you cannot just say, we move for topic 1 to go first. You're going to sound like someone who doesn't know what they're doing, right? So you can move topic 1, 2, or 3, or 1, 3, and 2. But you have to tell the dais the order of the 3 topics. That's how the procedure works. But you really only cares which one goes first. Does that make sense? But in making it, you have to let them know, right? And you kind of want to explain, like other delegates, when you're like in informal session, if you realize they're not aware of that, kind of let them know, because you don't want them to vote against you because you are like 1, 2, 3, and they're like 1, 3, 2, and they think they have to vote against you because they're 1, 3, 2. Because remember, they're not going to discuss. So if you feel they don't know what they're doing, that's when you show off and gain their confidence and hearts, you know, by exercising leadership. I'm just saying. But see, you are prepared, people. You are prepared. Yes. So you only care about the first one. You want to explain that to people. But when you move it, you have to say this and then that and then that. Does that make sense? Everyone? All right. Questions on any of the motions? When you go into voting, chances are there might be amendments. Remember, we already talked about before friendly amendments and unfriendly amendments. What is the difference between friendly amendments and unfriendly amendments? Stop breaking my heart.
Friendly amendments are made by one of the sponsors, right?
Yes.
It's like we wanted it.
Yes. Friendly amendments are made by sponsors. If there is something, all the sponsors need to agree on that friendly amendment. All right? That's easier depending on how many sponsors do you have. That's one of the reasons you might not want to have 20 sponsors, because you're going to need 20 signatures to pass a friendly amendment. Unfriendly amendments are amendments that are not passed by sponsors, right? Unfriendly amendments, they can vary on how much change they add to your resolution, right? So it can be a clarifying change. It can be, a matter of language. It can be adding a sub-item to something. But it could also be something that is dramatically distinct from the spirit and the content of the resolution, right? When you go to voting procedures, before voting on the resolutions, the first thing that's voted on is on the amendments, okay? So when you're going to vote for a resolution, there's going to be a bunch of resolutions, right? So you're going to vote each resolution in the order that the dais decides. And then when you start, let's say the first resolution, before voting the resolution, you are voting on the amendments to the resolution. Does that make sense? And so you're also going to vote in the amendments to the resolutions. That vote is going to happen in an order that it hurts the resolution the most to then it hurts the resolution the least. Right? So the most outrageous amendments are going to be voted first. Right? So the delegates can control like how much damage they want to cause to the resolution or not. Yeah, abbreviated script, I'm pretty sure that's correct. So from most damage to least damage. All right? And then once we're done voting on the amendments, then you have the newly amended resolution. Then you vote on the resolution. All right? Questions? All is good?
By what day will we vote on the resolution?
The last one, the last day, yes. The last day. So we'll have, we're going to get there. Is there any other questions on any substantive content?
Okay,
Before.
so if there's multiple, amendments, and like the first one completely changes something and the second one was going to change something that was there, but now it's not. Is that amendment just like thrown out? Does that make sense?
If you have like two contradictory amendments?
Yeah.
I would think so.
Okay.
I would think so. And here's another thing, right? So if you sponsor the resolution, and then there is an amendment that or a report, there is an amendment that fundamentally changes the character of your resolution or report, it's okay for you to vote against your own resolution if you think it changed it in a way that it completely lost what it was supposed to be. And what you can do is that you can send a little note to the dais and explain your vote. Like that's a possibility. Even though the delegation of Santa Fe and Principe was one of the sponsors of this resolution, we believe that the adoption of the amendment blah 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 fundamentally changes what this resolution is meant to be and contradicts our foreign policy in blah 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 ways, and hence we are forced to vote against it. That's a possibility. Hopefully that's not going to happen to you guys. Yes. All right. Questions?
I have one more. I'm sorry.
Yes. No. You're.
Okay, so you said a note. Is that like on the handwritten notepad? Is that how we talk to the dais
Yeah.
every time?
Unless they ask if anyone has a motion, and it's a proper motion. But that's how you talk to the dais. If you are in formal session, you can pass a note. If you would be in informal session, you could just approach the dais, right? So if you were not here, but if you're operating here, you can just leave your group for a little bit and go talk to them about whatever. But if you're talking about explaining your voting, that means that you are in voting procedure. So we can either, actually you cannot send even a note, like you cannot do anything besides vote during voting procedure. So if you know in advance that you're gonna vote no, you can send a note in advance, or you can send a note after, but you cannot send a note during voting procedure. Like it's absolutely, like it's formal, it's all you're doing, no going to the bathroom, no going to get food, no going to do anything, no leaving the room, just voting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So even like longer amendments would be handwritten and given to the dais.
Yes.
Okay.
All amendments are handwritten. Everything that is going to go to the dais for voting will be handwritten, like in terms of like a resolution or a report. Yeah? Questions? Okay, so I think we're done with substantive material. Let me talk to you a little bit about the schedule when you're there. We have a schedule at the end of your syllabus. Yes. 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 And the first day, so we're going to arrive that on Saturday. Probably going to get there around noon or 1. We're going to go, I think, we're going to go and go to the hotel, leave our luggage somewhere. We have some free time. The first event of the evening is the opening ceremony at 6 p.m. Right? So remember, you're going to have to find time to come back to your room, to shower or change, depending on whether you feel like you should shower or change. And then we're going to go together to the opening ceremony. All right? And then after the opening ceremony, we're going to start committee sessions. That's the setting of the agenda, first session. All right? So that's going to happen on Sunday night. Chances are, soon enough on Sunday night, we're going to set the agenda. And you might even start discussing your topic that you settle for on that evening. Monday morning is usually when the Moon Conference allocates time for delegations to go visit their missions, the real Saint Thomas and Principe delegation, the real people, right? So we try to contact them multiple times through various different phones and emails and Facebook, and we couldn't find them. We know we have an address, we don't know if they're there or not. So on Monday morning, you're literally going to go walk there and knock their door, and we might get lucky or not, but we'll just do it. And then on Monday afternoon and Monday evening, you're going to have a committee session, right? And then Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening. Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon. We usually don't have session on Wednesday evenings, because usually that's when delegates are actually cramming. You're going to be in your working group in someone's room or in the lobby or somewhere, or sitting on the floor somewhere, and you're cramming and you're putting all the stuff that needs to be put in the draft resolution, right? And then after that, on Thursday morning, I believe, I'm not sure if we have one more session, or you're going to go to the UN on Thursday afternoon. We're going to go to the real UN. That's all of it said and done. So I think you were voting on Thursday morning. Is that right, Amy?
Yeah, we're voting, but we're voting also at the UN.
Yes, you're voting both. So you're going to vote in your committee, but when you vote on the UN, you don't vote by committee, you vote as a whole. So the resolutions or the reports that you do in your committee needs to be passed by your committee. But when you go to the UN on Thursday afternoon, it is as if you're not voting, but is the United Nations as a whole is approving that resolution that passed in your committee. Does that make sense? So it's the UN as a whole. So, and usually everything is approved in committee gets approved, I believe.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, why would anyone vote differently than they voted in committee? That would just be dumb. So everyone approved, the passing committee passed in that vote as a whole. And then after that, we are done. And on Thursday evening, we have the delegate dance. So we have a gap of time before we were done at the UN and before the delegate dance. So last year, we went to the,
Statue of Liberty.
yes, no, not on Thursday night, to the World Trade Center Memorial.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we went to the Statue of Liberty, I think, on Sunday.
Sunday.
Yes. So, and there's a number of things we can do when we talk about that. So you have some time that we can hang out. I mean, while you were there, you were semi-free to do whatever. I think it's okay. That's why I say semi-free. You were semi-free in the following manners. No one is ever alone. You were going to walk in groups of 3. All right? If other 2 people don't want to hang out with you and do what you want, that's too bad. You're a bad negotiator. You are not going alone anywhere. Are we clear? You are not going alone anywhere. I don't care. I don't care if it's to buy pretzels, if it's to buy water. I don't care. You're not going alone anywhere. When you have lots of things to do there, and it's okay that as a group, the 12 of us don't do everything together. So if at least 3 of you want to go and do stuff together, sure, after you let me know and I approve of those plans, right? Remember, you are my responsibility. Okay, I am a big sister. I've always been a big sister, and I will always will, which means like you're on my watch. No one messes up. There you go. You, the two of us are gonna hang out so much.
Great, yeah.
Yes, you. Don't cause me trouble, Asher. Not that you will, because your mama is gonna eat me alive. All right. So there are two other people that want to do something different. I'd much rather we tag along. If there are two other people, yes, and I'm gonna yell at them if something happens. So just so you know. But I think you're a good person and you're not gonna do any unsensible things. Being the son of whose parents you are, I hope that they have instilled common sense in your heart, even at a younger age. But those are the rules, okay? So you're semi-free. If you want to go do something different, shoot me a text. We're going to exchange phone numbers. Everyone's going to have everyone's phone numbers. No one's alone. No one. No one is alone at any time, okay? If there is any trouble, if there's anything, like shoot me a text or call me immediately. All right? But nothing, yes, happens in that way, I think partially because I yell at you enough in advance. Plus, you're commonsensical people. Plus, really, don't make me upset. There you go. Be safe, people. Be safe. We don't want anything bad happening to you, such as, oh gosh, people getting lost or losing their credit cards or, God forbid, just don't get lost. All right. You too. Don't get lost, William. All right. Sure, we'll talk more about those things later, but this is the gist of it. Questions?
Do we have to wear business clothes when we're like during free time?
No.
Okay.
During free time, you can wear whatever you want. Yes. You can wear whatever you want during free time. So when you're traveling, whatever you want. On Sunday before the conference, whatever you want. And as the conference starts, business attire. If you have questions about what business attire look like, you have me to ask. I will answer those questions very honestly. So business attire, people.
Are we allowed to wear like little sweaters like that?
Yes, because it's going to be cold. Or you can have like just a formal jacket, like a blazer. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I suppose, comfy shoes for walking, especially in our free time, right? Bring a tote bag and have a pair of flats in your tote bag so that you can sweep for your heels if you have heels, so that you're going to be walking a lot. Comfy shoes. All right, people, that's all for today.